guys, my name is Itimi and you're welcome to another episode of Founders Connect. Here we have conversations with amazing entrepreneurs and operators in the African tech ecosystem. Today I'm having a conversation with Marvin. He's the founder and CEO of Raise. Raise is a platform that you can use to send, buy, and
sell equity
across Africa. I was almost there.
So close.
Anyway, guys, so let's have this conversation. Make sure you watch this video to the end. Leave your comment, leave your like, share the video, subscribe to the channel. You know, all of it make me happy. But yeah, let's meet Marvin and his company.
Welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm Itimi, a change maker, professional, and creative who is passionate about growing people and growing businesses. Like, comment, subscribe to my channel, and please always share my videos. It promises to always be impactful and insightful.
Hi, Marvin.
How you doing?
I'm good.
It's my first YouTube video.
Ever?
First time, yo. I never been on the other side of the camera.
Ah, look at that. It's my pleasure to help you do this.
Same.
First time. It's my first time in Nairobi.
Welcome. I hope y'all enjoy the city.
I hope so too. I mean, help me out. And it's
not winter like in London.
Thankfully.
Yeah.
But I was hoping it was going to be hotter, but it's not.
No, you came at a bad time. The weather was
When's a good time to come?
Huh?
When's a good time to come?
Now. But you unlucky because the weather's not been nice this last week. Storms.
Maybe before I go, it would be better. I crave heat. I'm craving heat. I wouldn't mind.
Yeah, because you in the winter, right?
Yep.
That ain't nice. I used to live in Canada, so I could relate.
Oh yeah? Where did you grow up?
In the Bahamas.
Oh, you were born there? You're from there?
I'm a son of the Bahamas, and then I was born in Paris and grew up there, and then I studied in Canada. So that's when I was in the cold.
Okay, let's go back to that story.
Let's go back.
You were born in the Bahamas.
I was born in Paris.
You were born.
Raised in the Bahamas.
Let's do it like so.
Okay, go.
Tell me about growing up and tell me your background.
The question's so much easier. Born in Paris, raised in the Bahamas, studied and educated in Canada, and then I ended up in Nairobi. I moved to Nairobi.
Okay, there's obviously more to the story. Are your parents French, or are they from the Bahamas, or are they Canadians?
My parents are, my mother is French, my father is from the Bahamas.
Oh, okay.
And I studied in Canada because when you have a French passport in Montreal, you could study at almost no cost, and that's all we could afford.
Okay.
Went there. I'm a student of Pan-African political economy and history, and that's what I studied and wrote in. And then I did a law degree in cross-border arbitration between countries.
Okay.
And the core of my thesis was, how could we build, as a student of Pan-African economic history, how can we build financial, social, economic infrastructures for our people to be financially independent and not dependent on powers that didn't work out for us in the first instances.
Sounds very smart.
Not really. It's a whole wave, right? The thing is, everything happens in themes and cycles, right? And there's been themes and cycles of Pan-African unity in different forms. At one point it was militant, then it became economic, and then it became socio-political, which is what we're in right now. That's the cycle.
Yeah, makes sense. So why did you move to Nairobi, and why are you building for Africa? Because Canada, Paris, Bahamas, Nairobi.
A member of the diaspora, yo. That's the strongest thing. The Caribbean is the home of Pan-African diaspora, right? So when you had that cycle
Did you ever visit Africa before you moved?
Nah, yo. Just get on the plane.
Tell me about what in your experience made, I mean, okay, you're diaspora, yes. But what in your experience or in your upbringing sort of connected you to the African road that you decided, I want to build something, and I'm going to build it for Africa, and I'm going to move to Africa to do it, when all of your pure experiences were in another continent?
I think one thing is that so in school I literally was just studying Pan-African economic history, right? And a lot of that is Caribbean authors.
What made you interested in that?
I don't know. I mean, it just felt like when you grew up in the diaspora, when you grew up in the Caribbean, you quickly learn about the horrible things that happened to our people, right? And many years. And you could either choose to just ignore that, which is probably the safer and easier route, or confront it and try and do something about it. And I just always felt compelled to do that. And then I'm a Rastafari, and a very central tenet of Rastafari is exactly that. Pan-African economic and social unity is the happiest way for Black people to live. Always been the case. And we just had such a hard time. It's time for us to rise. And you can see that happening all over the world. It's not just me or you. Even this conference she's just talking about, all these illiquid 23-year-old African millionaires just walking around. It's incredible. So creating that independence is how we can create the things that we want to create in the future we want to create, not the future that's been created and ordained for us.
Okay. I have many questions.
I know, I can see it all in your face. I saw like 6. Go for it.
Where do we start from? So I'm interested in. Okay, let me go back to your upbringing. Tell me what your most favorite childhood memory is.
You poking my soul for real? I'm not joking.
No.
My favorite childhood. What's yours? What's yours? Tell me. Yeah, nice, right?
This is going to be an interesting interview. What's my favorite memory as a child? I think it's playing for. So there's this. So I grew up in Benin City in Nigeria, in Edo State, as in the south. And so I was a tomboy. They call it tomboy, then I call it androgynous now. Doesn't really matter. But yeah, so there's this field close to my house. It was a really big field, like 100 by 100 plots of land, and it was cleared. And we used to play football there. I remember. I mean, football is 11-11, right? I remember being the only girl, and it'd be like 21 other boys.
Nice.
And every day after school, we'd just play football, and my mom would come back. I would be shouting, "Ekolome, what are you doing there?" and all of that stuff. And it was fun. And then eventually they built a Jehovah's Witness church in that place, which I mean is
classic.
for God, but I mean I miss playing football there.
Okay, you still play football?
I would still kick a soccer ball if I see now, but I stopped actively doing it as a thing in my 200 level. Now I'm doing things like karate and roller skating.
Respect.
Now tell me about you.
Nice. This whole time I couldn't think of a childhood memory. I was thinking about it. I guess how was a child? How far can I go?
As far as you want.
Boy, I'm still struggling. I guess childhood memory is I played a lot of tennis growing up. And that was like a refuge.
Did you play tennis?
If a tennis ball lying around.
I don't like the way you're doing it.
Yeah, and there's a racket, I'll find a way to play. But no, now I fight. I'm a Muay Thai fighter. And I haven't played tennis in a while. But that's a favorite memory because that was like an escape from, not an escape, but also just like a focus on one very specific thing all of the time for many years in a row. So I think that's a lot of important moments on the court. Discipline. Discipline is a very important theme that we should all have in our lives. Discipline and focus.
Okay. So you studied the Pan-Africanism and then you did law after that, right? After school, this was probably like how many years in total?
Oh, I was studying like university for like 8 years.
That's a long time.
I was searching, man.
Like school?
No, I was searching.
Searching for what?
A tool to make this thing a reality. So in university, the tool was mostly just understanding the philosophical underpinnings of Pan-Africanism, which is a whole school of thought.
History,
right. Exactly. And then from there, I was like,
now I know.
what I can do, write about stuff, and that was just frustrating to me. So I went to law school because I was just like, there has to be a legal system we can build to create financial independence. And at that time, I was actually writing about trade agreements. So the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, things like that. And I was still frustrated. And I was like, you know what? I think the answer is us, young people, young Africans, all these generations of young Pan-African diaspora and on the continent people would answer, but we don't have we're not enfranchised to do these things. Like, where's the money going to come from? Our governments obviously have failed us and continue to fail us. So like, where do we get the money from? And that's where startups came from. Startups is like the craziest generation, like this craziest generator of wealth in such a short period of time. So then I went to work at an international law firm doing deals for companies, startups. And the hypothesis there was, all right, I kind of get the philosophical underpinnings. I understand that's important. Foundations, fundamentals, you see what I'm saying? Then have a good sense of the legal systems, like how we could build these cross-border things. And then working with startups was like, all right, cool. I don't know how long I want to work for all these Canadian startups, but I want to learn how Silicon Valley, Canada, North America built their financial infrastructure, right? Like Silicon Valley ignoring the talent and all that stuff. At the root, what they did well was financial infrastructure for startups to raise money at different points in time. So the hypothesis there was simple. What if we took that infrastructure, that same kind of thing, and fused it with new financial technologies? At that time, cryptocurrency, that's what I was into in 2017.
Wait, so I don't lose track.
Yeah.
This, what you're about talking about now, was it at the international law firm?
Yeah.
Or that was after the international law firm, you started thinking about how you can then do that and crypto came about?
This was at the law firm.
At the law firm,
as I was at the law firm in 2017, there's a law firm called Dentons. I remember I was specifically drafting deals for startups like Series A, Series B, Series C, and things like that. And then there was a Canadian version of the national venture capital like rules and documents and things like that. So I led the creation of them, and at the same time as when initial coin offerings, which is a way of raising money in crypto, was popping up. And I was looking at that and I was like, yo, that ain't tokens, that's securities. And so what happens if you take highly liquid securities with financial infrastructure for startups and young African people to grow things, and if you built it in such a way that it was, all this money was being funneled for a purpose, which is to build up the African continent primarily, and the Caribbean and Latin America and all these things, and you distributed that wealth as equity throughout the diaspora, that's financial independence. No one has to be in any physical place. You just distribute the equity, everybody's an owner, and then they invested in things that they want to see happen. So for you, for example, if in your hometown you wanted to understand how, I can't think of an example, Mono, we keep coming back to Mono, was going to build like infrastructure that solved this problem in a very specific state that you're in, right? And you knew you could calculate the financial return from that. Not only you creating an impact you want to see, but you're also making money from it. That is like a win-win situation. So how do we build that infrastructure? And that's where Raise came from, directly.
How long did you spend in the international law firm?
A year and a half.
Oh, that was a short time, but really
short
impactful.
So everyone has a superpower. I feel like mine is learning. I love to learn, and I like to learn quickly. So I was just like, I kind of get what's going on here. Bounce. Let me figure this out.
So if you take aside the technicalities of what you learned in terms of tokens and securities and infrastructure and all of this, what would I say intangible lessons did you learn working in that organization? That is not...
Yo, these questions, man, you're killing me. These are very good questions, I have to think. What did I learn at Dentons intangible? I think focus, yo. The importance of focus is one of the most, it's just one of the most beautiful, but like when you're focused, you can flow. And flowing, you said you played football, right? And then you do karate, right? You felt what flow is. Everyone knows what flow is because you enter that moment where you just, things feel effortless. Like you're just going through things. And that's what happens when you focus on a very singular thing for an amount of time. There's obviously sacrifices you have to make outside of that, but that state of flow is the natural rhythm of the universe and the planet. And when you reach that point is when you perform it at your best. And at that firm is what I understood, the importance of just being focused, yo. Just.
How did you see that? Was it was that something you learned from your experience of, I'm focusing on just learning here, focusing on learning with this startup, and then you realized the flow, or it was something that you saw people in the organization do? Like, give me a bit of context.
I think I only really learned that recently, yo. So leaning into your superpower is an important thing to understand. I only just understood mine like 6 months ago. I was like, yo, I feel like I pick up things quickly and then able to like digest them and act on them very quickly. What happens if I like intentionally learn? Whereas before I was just learning stuff because I was looking for a tool, right?
Yeah.
So at Dentons, it was like, I think I went from junior associate, I didn't know anything about contract law, to drafting Series C contracts in the space of like 4 months. And I remember all the lawyers being like, that's not normal. And I was like, I just typing some stuff out. And then, in those moments, like when you draft in contracts especially, it's essentially like coding. You got 5 contracts up, you got 6 pieces of case law on one computer, etc., and you have to basically piece this stuff into a document. And that requires a lot of focus. So I guess that skill, but it's only now that I started to understand.
And realize, in retrospect.
Because it leads that growth hacking is same concept. You piece together a lot of information into a digestible form and then break it back and do the same thing again. So that's what contracts is.
Okay, makes sense. So now let's talk about Raise. When you left the company, did you start Raise immediately? Or what did you do?
I think so, yeah.
How did Raise start?
It did. It was called Crowdcoin.
Crowdcoin, okay.
Lamest name, it'll probably landed us in jail. Crowdcoin, because the idea was, we want to distribute equity to everybody, right?
Yeah, like, and it was based on ICO.
It was based on ICO. It was based on ICOs, which is a mistake.
Tell me why.
Because ICOs is like banned really quickly, right? Like that was a huge securities. It's still illegal in many countries, right? And here we're talking about distributing equity in countries like the Bahamas or Nigeria, and who are not set up the infrastructure to be able to support this level of financial decentralization, essentially, right? So the core concept of this is that like monetary systems, interest rates, loans, Nigerian naira, Kenyan shilling, all these things have been centralized into the hands of a few people that make these decisions, and they are obviously not capable of making those decisions at the level of velocity that we need them to. And equity is one of those things. Equity is controlled by a few set of people who are very wealthy, and then, things like that. So ICOs and crypto and all of that is a massive technological and financial revolution that is trying to decentralize ownership of stuff.
And what's Raise doing about it?
At the time or just now?
Now.
Well, yeah. Distributing crypto tokens is very easy to do. Very easy, because the infrastructure is technological, has already been built. You have layers of small contracts that update contracts and transactions, blocks, constantly updating. Every transaction that happens all across the world is either being updated on an exchange or on the base layer of the actual cryptocurrency protocol that you're using. Problem with equity, though, is that there is no single digital source of truth for equity.
So let's break down. Speak to me like I don't know anything about what you're saying. So when you say equity, are you talking about me having shares in a company? Are you talking about stock options? Are you talking about having access to certain tokens? Like, what exactly what is this equity and who is it for?
Equity is ownership.
Okay.
So equity is ownership of something. That could be anything. It could be that lamp, it could be anything. In this case, we're talking about ownership of shares in private companies.
Okay.
You have shares, and then on top of that, you could have convertibles and options and say all flavors, call them flavors. And
so first of all, people you're targeting and trying to help are people who have access or who can get access to the shares or who have shares in different companies.
So Raise provides a platform that onboards startups, and those startups, can track all of their equity, who owns it, how much of it they own, how much they've distributed, things like that, and they can distribute it. That is just straightforward SaaS platform.
Right.
Behind that, though, the vision and mission is to create this infrastructure for African equity in private companies where anybody can trade and buy and sell securities on top, but all of the compliance, all of the transactions, all of the things that are necessary to make that engine run are automated using Raise infrastructure.
Right.
So I guess Mono, I keep coming back to Mono because it's just,
okay.
y'all interviewed them, they good. They build a layer on top of all of these different banks and things like that, and then you could basically trade things on top of that layer.
Just plug and play.
That's essentially what we build in, but for equity.
Right.
Another comparison is Flutterwave. Flutterwave built the payment rails so people can now move money across the continent, and that's a lot. You have to automate the currencies, the transactions, the FX rates, the compliance. Like, it's a whole stack of things. We build that stack, but for equity.
Right.
So the future world that we can live in is that someone like our relatives who live in UK, for example, to people who live on the continent, be able to sell equity, collateralize against equity, so take loans against them, liquidate them, sell shares, all these different kinds of things will be so natural, just like how we move money today, but now it's not, and that infrastructure needs to be built. So what you're saying about crypto is that in the cryptocurrency world, the reason it works, and I can send transactions to you and anyone right now, is that there is a layer of information that's constantly updating every crypto transaction. But in the world of equity and private companies, that does not exist. So in our ecosystem of startup tech, there's $5 billion raised last year, all on different platforms. So you have data that's just fragmented all over the place. So no one actually knows what they own, which to me is just a huge bubble waiting to be corrected, right? So here we kind of being all right, let's organize all this stuff into a base layer. That is the base layer, and then now we're gonna add tools for things on top of it. So founders will be able to sell shares, get money, same thing for employees, things like that, in the click of a button, liquidated into their local accounts, tax deducted, everything.
Anywhere in Africa?
Anywhere, across the world.
Across the world?
But for African companies.
For African companies and
That's
Africans.
the focus, exactly.
In the last 4 years that you've been doing Raise? Is it
2017, yo.
So 5 years this year, but let's stick with 4 years on someone.
That makes you feel better. It's been so long, 5 years, 2017 to now, April.
5 years.
Yeah, coming up on 5. I gotta celebrate. I don't know if I should celebrate, but it's been a journey, yo.
Yeah, that journey, 2 questions. What would you say has been the key milestones, the things that's happened that makes you know that, I think I'm on the right path. I think that there is something here that you haven't given up in 6 months, in 1 year. I mean, he's in year 5. But also, what has been the biggest challenges?
The challenges is just the level of patience and persistence you gotta have for a long period of time. Like, we talking about a startup that is 5 years in and not nearly making enough money to justify the level of expense that goes into it, right? Like many startups.
And what are you spending money on? The infrastructure?
Mostly salaries. Mostly salaries. Like cap table software. So cap table software is the short term for what this is. And I think there's only like 6 like really good cap table platforms on the planet. So we're not that many, and most of them in states in Delaware, right? But the ones that have worked spend $2 to $3 million when they start out, but now they're making like $200 to $400 million a year, because that data is like super essential, and you have to build that infrastructure first. So the milestone is now, yo. Like, we in this crazy inflection point. When we started this, most founders did not care about equity at all. Like, and I was like, why do I need a cap table? And we still face that today. And it's nuts, because I always just like, why y'all doing all this? Like, what are you building? Like, if you don't understand what your equity is for, you don't understand the fundamentals of why this ecosystem exists. We're just building stuff otherwise. Like, this equity creates financial independence for many different people. And if we organize it really well, they become talented, they build other things, and then we build in generational wealth. Equity is ownership is generational wealth. But in 2019, no one cared. Now people care a lot. And a lot of people know us. Like, our brand equity is growing as a result of just being persistent, you know, for a long time. So we're in this crazy milestone period, inflection point right now, where we have the right investors on our cap table. We have the right partners who are lined up. We have the right products that are lined up. And now we're in the process of going back to market with a very clear value proposition after we finish our seed.
When you say back to market, did you kind of leave market before?
No, you would appreciate this, like growth hacking, right? Like, it just became apparent that the value proposition of Raise wasn't that clear. Especially because people don't really care about cap tables that much, and there hasn't been that much liquidity for people to be like, oh, I get why I need that. And most cap table platforms is a grudge purchase. Like, no one likes to use them. It's kind of like email. Like, you have to use it. But for us, we're trying to make it fun and enjoyable to use cap table software. So we have to we're redesigning an entire platform and go-to-market and value proposition, which is why we hired the growth hacker to be like, all right, cool. This is now what Raise actually is based on our learnings of the ecosystem.
And what is that?
Still trying to figure out, but where it's leaning towards is that it's this equity infrastructure. It's not just like a SaaS platform. We're building an equity infrastructure that is...
So people can see the big picture, not just what it is right now.
Yeah, people see us a collection of tools. And I'm just like, that's not what that's not what we're doing at all. We build in tools that create prosperity for African people by using equity and ownership as a tool. That was nice.
You cut yourself.
Whoa.
Say it again if you can.
I don't even remember, but y'all recorded it so good. That's where the brand is going. So we're rebranding and stuff right now, and like, we had some big investors come on the cap table recently. And yeah, we definitely position ourselves as that's why I say the go-to platform, the equity platform. It is, building cap table infrastructure is an extremely technical lift. It's not easy. Like, forget, most companies should just go to their customers all the time. That's always the case, but we'd go out, get customers, and they'd come, one bug, you'd never see them again. Because cap table ownership is so sensitive. As a startup, you come on board on Raise, and this has happened many times, and we've corrected it. Company comes on board, they send out a certificate to one of their shareholders, like, how people take investor conversation seriously. One bug, could have been a VPN, could have been all kinds of different things, but it's always our fault. We bear the liability, all right? And then those people bounce. So in as much as we have to go to customers and understand our value prop, we also have to maintain this unnecessarily complicated piece of infrastructure to do this kind of stuff that has such a high trust associated with it. And I think that's why we're going through this milestone, is because we've been around for a while, and time in the market is trust. We've worked with a lot of people. We have a lot of equity on the platform at this point. So now is the milestone. And the major challenge is persistence and patience.
Continuing the persistence and patience, because that's literally what has taken you to this. Yeah,
the mission. Equity, there's monetary systems, and then there's capital markets. Monetary systems is money, payments. Then there's capital markets, which is capital that moves around in markets, which is equity, stock, shares, all these different things. Right now, you're seeing a bunch of companies building out payments infrastructure, right? We need equity infrastructure, so we build that part of it. And when you can and this is what I think is what I'm just so bullish on. You have this mix of extremely advanced payment infrastructure, Flutterwave, Mono, Oka, all these different platforms, and extremely intricate and well-built equity infrastructure. The financial infrastructure we would have created and left for this ecosystem and this continent is worth dying for. And that's the only reason, at least for me, patience and just persistence. And many members of our team, same thing. We just know that this is a game changer, and it'll take a while, and the financial returns will have been worth it. But more importantly, the infrastructure we leaving behind is like nothing else. Like Silicon Valley, I think it took like 45, 60 years for them to have a cap table platform, and it's not that great. You see what I'm saying? Like, that's where we are, and that's why we persistent, because we know the impact of this is worth trillions of dollars, not billions.
We've done 5 years. If you were going to go back to year one, if you had the opportunity to go back and change anything, what would you change?
That hire growth hacker. That's the first thing. A growth hacker and a product manager. That'll be the first thing I do. We hired engineers. Yeah, not the best.
Tell me why. Add more context.
Because is that weird dichotomy, right? Like, we know that we engineer in advanced financial contracts using blockchain-based systems and smart contracts and regular traditional databases. So it's things we just gotta build, right? But like, that's silly. Like, I wish we would have understood our value proposition way more clearly and built it as a solution to a problem versus just like engineering something that we know would make sense for the ecosystem. Growth hacker, product manager. Any startup, any team we build now internally. So now we're building a decentralized finance team internally. Finally, we've made it for such a long time. And it's a growth hacker and a product manager. That's it. That's it. We have the engineering capacity. They could always get what they need. Growth hacker, product manager, and designer. Those three things. And they just test until we find products that work. So that they're going to be releasing liquidity products. So you could sell stock options, ETFs, things like that, using the Raise infrastructure as an API.
How many people do you have on your team right now?
14 people.
What do you look for when you're hiring?
Patience.
And persistence.
Yeah, people who like focused and disciplined.
Test that?
It's hard. I mean, that's why we have a 3-month period to see how people work out and how we work out for them, right? Because you never know. And when we just looking for people who like excited about what we're doing first. And then once we get that, like growth hacker, a great example, super excited. And then his thesis for why he was joining Raise was extremely clear. I was like, cool, you should join us. And then now it's just like a process of here's all the stuff. Do what you do. And the same thing, we just hire for that.
Cool. And then why did you decide to, build Raise in Nairobi as against maybe any other African country? I have nothing against Nairobi. I'm just curious. I realized that question would have come up. I'm just curious.
In 2018,
because you moved from another continent. So what I'm asking is really why did you choose to move to Kenya?
It was a process. It was research. So in 2018, I took a one-way flight to the continent, backpack, no money left, with Raise, because like it was a pitch deck. And then I was in Joburg, Cape Town.
Do you have friends here?
No one. I didn't know anyone on the continent. I knew people from school, but I didn't know anyone here at all. Zero. It was just me for a long time. Joburg, Cape Town, that was cool but weird. And then Kenya and Uganda I went to. And then when you look at the map of the ecosystem funding at the time, I was just looking for the place that had the most amount of venture funding, one, and then two, the most amount of focus on social impact metrics. Those two things. And even still, I think Kenya is the one that ranks the highest in those two different things. But at the time, there wasn't TechCrunch articles about African startups. Like, that wasn't a thing, right?
Yeah.
It's just people raising money in different places in Kenya and here. And then, so there was social impact metrics, venture funding, and mobile money. Those are the three things. Because we have
what
to
role the mobile money play, or what does it play in Raise?
Equity would have to be mobile, right? The next generation, people won't really use computers and laptops like that. They'll be using mobile phones to trade high-frequency assets, and we have to build that on top of mobile money. I live on crypto for a long time now, and most of my crypto passes back through mobile money. I probably shouldn't say that. I hope Safari going to listen to me. Don't say anything. He's an international guy.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Has Raise raised?
Yes.
And how long did it take you?
Oh, so our last seed round in
last seed round?
October. Our first seed round, our last seed round was in October this year. We started fundraising on September 17th. I think we closed on like October 2nd, something like that. 2.3 million. Yeah, it took like a week and a half.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we measured everything because it was an experiment. It was like, what is the anatomy of a seed round?
And that was the first time you were raising money?
A seed round. No. We raised a pre-seed round from Binance, cryptocurrency exchange in 2019. And that money lasted us about 24 months. And then we raised again, seed round. We stretched. I believe very much that we don't need we need more profitable African startups. We don't need high growth, loss making. I don't think that's reasonable. So we try and stretch out our runway responsibly.
So from the data you collected, what made the race so short and so successful?
Planning. We just planned a lot, and we collected a lot of data up front, and we used the race platform. So yeah, once it went live, then we closed it, and we measured how high the valuation went up and down at different points in the fundraise. Because the fundraise is essentially an auction, right? It's even a narrative around it is like we're fundraising. It makes us look all like charitable cases. No, we're selling equity in extremely talented companies and teams. That's a very different frame of thinking. So when we went to market, it was like, we're not fundraising. Like we don't need to fundraise. Like, we're selling you equity in this thing. Do you want to be a part of it? If not, there's other people that we really think would be very valuable. What do you bring to the table? So I think just having that narrative and preparing the data ahead of time and then using a raise platform, hint, hint, to your customers, made it, fast, very fast. It wasn't about speed, it was about the efficiency. Because most companies will fundraise and then not update their cap table and things after. All of that stuff happened in one period of time. Cap table was clean, all that stuff happened in 2 weeks.
Interesting. And what plans do you have? I mean, you mentioned building a decentralized finance team in between. You mentioned like going really deep into infrastructure. Are there other things that this round is helping you do?
I think the round is helping us work with really talented people, growth hackers, experienced product managers.
Really like your growth hacker.
I'm such a fan. I've been seeing this stuff and I'm like, you telling me that we could launch landing pages like this quickly? I've been waiting for this for a long time. I built our whole website initially. Now we have someone who can do that. As a founder, you just want to fire yourself.
Probably ask for a raise.
Yeah. So yeah, for real. I shouldn't say, but. One is work with really like people who join the mission and want to stay. You know what I mean? Like, as an example, we had a product manager recently, and she's experienced, yo. Like, I had a conversation with her and I was like, I don't know how to lead you, yo. Like, she's worked at IBM, she's led all kind of different teams. And the other day she was like, I really want to ride this out. I was like, wow. All these brilliant people with all these skills are like, we understand where we're going. Let's build this out for the next 10 years. So that's the first thing. Second thing is our platform, the product now, we're releasing a new version of it now over the next 5-6 months, just different sequences of it, up until a rebrand. And that rebrand is like, we're not tools, we're infrastructure. And this is how we look.
Changing the name?
No. Raise is good, man. Raise is nice.
It's good. It's so good.
We changed the domain name to Raise South Africa because it's like investors ask me all the time. It's like, this is a global thing. Sure, definitely, but we care about our people and the African continent, so we're Raise for Africa, and that is going to be so strong in the branding, unapologetically so. So product releases, working with talented people, and then. Third thing is, the decentralized finance. I've been waiting for that for a long time. That means that, experimenting things like, instead of investing in one financial tech startup in Nigeria, invest in a basket of them. Or we have, these 5 companies in Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa just raised money, and we know that the value of their stock option pools is now 15 million. Press this button and we'll return 10 million to all of these different employees in 5 seconds to all of their accounts, and then they can invest cowrie-wise and piggyvest and all these different things. That's what that decentralized finance arm is going to let us do. That's
very exciting.
Because we can measure it now, right? So one of the biggest and hardest things about what we're doing, we're basically building infrastructure for a stock exchange. I think that's the easiest way to say it, right? And to do that, you have to bootstrap liquidity. You familiar with bootstrapping, right?
Yeah.
Bootstrapping liquidity is very hard because in a traditional marketplace, growth hacking, you have to find the demand side and supply side, like Uber, right?
Yeah.
But in cap tables, our approach it's really hard to get both of those sides to be happy at the same time. Trust me, we've tried. And we ended up being like, our vision is to create access to finance for startups and their teams. That's where we focus. And that is a brilliant bootstrapping technique because every startup we onboard has a valuation and that valuation continues to grow. So now we can measure that, and I can't say it publicly, but it's significant. Like as a result of onboarding so many startups over time and their value growing and their value being instituted at the time, created like hundreds of millions of dollars of equity. So now we're looking at it like, whoa, we actually bootstrap liquidity. Now how do we turn this huge network of the ecosystem back on itself to start creating liquidity? The company's doing this anyway.
Yeah.
But it's like burdensome paper and things. It's just like, let's reduce this to buttons, connect it to Mono, pay out people into their bank accounts, make it really, 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 really easy. Yeah. That's the next phase. Makes
sense. And I think you might have answered this in different ways, but and this is my last question. But in very simple terms, why should people care about Raise? You talk a lot about the founders and investors and the cap table and people that have the equity. In the African tech ecosystem, there's still a lot of companies that are not giving their employees shares and equity. There's still a lot. So when people think about Raise First for equity, by default, I would think, oh yeah, it's mostly for the investors and founders. So is there any reason for employees and just everyday people to care? Is there any way that this can directly impact them enough to say, okay, I want to look forward to what you're building? Yeah. In very simple terms.
Yeah, people could, in very simple terms, all of us want to wake up every day and enjoy what we do. And a big reason sometimes we're not able to do that is because we have so many financial stresses behind us that are preventing us from having a clear mind to focus and find flow. So if employees, founders, shareholders, investors, whoever they are, these tools will create a lot of financial independence for a lot of people. And like the more headspace they have, the better of a continent they, if you don't have to think about just the bare necessities and things you're just trying to put in place for your family, the more headspace you have to think about things that you actually want to create and be a part of creating. And employees is actually where it starts. So you'll see there's a lot of fundraising platforms and ecosystem and stuff like that, and they're very like investor focused, which I think is cool. But then our question is always like, okay, cool, where are these investors from? Do they actually care about Africa, or are they just trying to make 100x? You know what I mean? So in simple terms, we're just trying to create financial independence for young people like us and create that headspace to create things that we all want to create without having to stress about things. I'm not trying, like imagine waking up on Monday and just enjoying. Like I love waking up on Monday and all these days. It's like, yeah, everybody should have that.
Yeah, I want to have that too.
You have it. Just the mindset,
Yeah, makes sense. And that was my last question. So this last one is, is there a question about yourself or Raise that you would have wanted me to ask you that I didn't? Or that you would have loved to answer?
No, you did a good job at poking my soul. Let me think about it. A question that
you'd have loved to answer.
Yeah, why are we doing this?
Why are you doing this?
The same thing, creating access to financial independence for people. Like financial independence is not everything. There's things far more important than money will ever be, but it matters. It really does. And the next generation, people could have education, they could have all the things that they want in the world, hopefully responsibly, and we don't mess this up. But that's why we exist, to create access to finance. Okay,
I like that. Do you know what I like about your story? I'll tell you a few things. One, I resonated when you said that you found that your superpower is learning. I think I feel like one of the most important things in life is just really knowing who you are. Yeah. And like, just not just knowing where you come from, but like what makes me me and what makes me different and what can I use to my advantage. And so just being able to identify your superpower, I think like anybody that does that, it can just take you really far. So that was like really just good to point. I'm like, oh yeah, I was like, smart. And also just the fact that you kept reiterating persistence and patience. Startups look fancy on the outside now, especially with TechCrunch articles. It looks, even me, I want to raise money. I don't know what I want to build here, but I want to
there's obligations behind that, trust.
Just jokes. So it looks really, it can look very, oh my God, it's shiny and there's so many announcements and all these good things. But I liked the sincerity of just, it has taken a lot of patience and persistence, because that tells that it's been challenging and hasn't been a lot of fun. But it's just, I believe in the mission, and that's something that you didn't have to say it so much like, oh, this is my mission and I believe so much in the mission, but just talking about how much you've persisted and you're just being patient and knowing that what you're building is something that you're building for 10 years and 20 years, 1 trillion years. It's many more. I really like that fact of just like there's something behind it, and I'm not building it for now, and because I know that it's going to outlive me and make trillions of dollars. You mentioned that. Exactly. I can then just be content in the moment and just persist and just be patient and say, at some point, hopefully.
Make it work.
You know,
just take it easy. Enjoy
It would
every
work.
day. It's a multi. I think last time I wrote it was like a vision for like 1,000+ years. This may or may not exist in the future. Probably not, but it would have laid the foundation for something else. And a key tenet of Rastafari is two things: knowledge of self. So I. That's why we say I all the time. And then patience and persistence and trust in God and Jah.
and that just sums who you are.
Yeah, I hope so.
Amazing. It's been very, very nice getting to know you and hearing you talk. At some point, I was like, I feel like I'm too stupid for this conversation.
No, man, don't say that.
I need to go
That's
read up
wild.
a lot more on like all of this, lingua on tokens and securities and infrastructure and reason. I'm like, I'm following, but then sometimes I'm like, Peace, are you following? I'm like, I'm following. But
I love
it was very fun. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Thanks for the questions.
Yeah, thank
Poking
you.
my soul.
Do you feel poked?
No. Yes. I changed my mind. Yeah. I definitely did.
Okay, but
it was awesome. I
I'm
appreciate
glad you
the
had,
time.
Yeah, I had a good conversation, and I hope you
Same.
guys also enjoyed this conversation. Thank you for watching this video to the end. Don't you leave my channel without subscribing. But yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.
Thank you. Peace out. Is that your tagline? That makes a lot of sense.
Right.